Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Pratt, Senior Vice President of Gun Owners of America. If you're a GOA member or a supporter of the Second Amendment, you know we're in the trenches every day fighting for your rights. And today I need to talk to you about something important and a bit disappointing. For the third time since President Trump took office, GOA is having to continue to fight one of his agencies in court. We were really hoping to work things out together because, let's be clear, the Trump administration has done a lot of great things for gun owners, way more than in President Trump's first term. From rolling back Biden-era regulations to standing up for our rights, they've been a breath of fresh air. Unfortunately, there have been a few times now where we've had to continue previous legal action because the administration has opposed real progress on three key issues. Again, we're supportive of the many pro-gun moves this administration is making, but we're not going to let anyone, even allies, ruin the incredible opportunities we have to secure long-lasting victories and prevent the weaponization of the ATF that we saw under Biden. So let me break this down for you. First, there's the case in Michigan. GOA sued because Biden's ATF was interfering with concealed carry permit holders. For many years, Michigan's CCW permits have been recognized as alternatives to Brady background checks, making it easier for Michiganders to exercise their rights. But the Trump administration tried to moot our lawsuit, essentially dodging the fight. Now, to its credit, the DOJ did issue a short-term administrative fix that resolved the dilemma created by the Biden administration. The problem? An administrative fix isn't permanent. A future anti-gun administration led by Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom could quickly overturn the Trump administration's determination. So, Michigan permit holders would be screwed all over again. Look, we can't let that happen. We need ironclad protections and need the administration to work with us rather than fight us on this. That's what's also frustrating us with the ATFs engaged in the business rule, where the government is trying to hold our lawsuit in limbo. You'll remember that Biden's ATF, in issuing this rule, was trying to force virtually every private gun sale and transfer to go through a registration background check. So GOA sued the ATF and got a preliminary injunction, which means the Biden administration was unable to enforce this rule against GOA members. This was huge. Well, the Biden administration was furious, and not surprisingly, they appealed the decision, which brings us to where we are today. If the current DOJ would simply withdraw the appeal, the judge in our district court could issue a ruling, and let me tell you, he is based. We anticipate a slam dunk against the ATFs engaged in the business rule. So again, our question is, what's the holdup? I mean, truly, this has been a very frustrating situation. And that brings us to the third fight I alluded to regarding ATF's so-called zero-tolerance policy, a nightmare from the Biden era. This rule revoked federal firearms licenses from hundreds of gun dealers across the country. They used it as a political weapon, intimidating dealers into surrendering their licenses because fighting back was too expensive. Biden's ATF claims certain regulatory violations showed, quote, willfulness. That's the legal standard for revocation, without actually proving it. It was basically strict liability. One mistake and you're out of business. This crushed small gun groups and limited Americans' access to firearms. We first had to file this lawsuit when Biden's ATF applied zero tolerance to one of our plaintiffs, Morehouse Enterprises, in our separate lawsuit against ATF's frame and receiver rule. Did you get that? Morehouse was hit with a proceeding to revoke their license under this abusive policy while we were already busy defending them against another one of ATF's heavy-handed regulations. It was a double whammy showing just how weaponized the ATF had become. Well, GOA, along with Morehouse Enterprises, doing business as Bridge City Ordnance, and our Gun Owners Foundation sued in the District of North Dakota to challenge this zero tolerance policy. We argued it was unlawful and violated the Administrative Procedure Act. Fast forward to now. The Trump administration claims they've eliminated zero tolerance. They rescinded the policy back in April 2025 after we pushed hard for that to happen. And that's a step in the right direction, and we're grateful for it. In fact, the DOJ under Attorney General Pam Bondi and Acting ATF Director Kash Patel announced the repeal as part of a broader review ordered by President Trump. This move is a major Second Amendment win, and it shows pro-gun leadership in action. We've been fighting for victories like this behind the scenes since Trump won the election. We've been lobbying, we've been filing comments, and building grassroots pressure. And to be sure, plenty has been done. The ATF is now launching a new era of reform, ending the zero tolerance policy and encouraging previously revoked dealers to reapply under fairer guidelines. In other words, they're prioritizing public safety over punishing minor errors, which is a huge shift from Biden's punitive approach. But here's the catch. They haven't done anything permanent to ensure the previous zero tolerance policy won't be weaponized against FFLs under the next administration. We've asked them to settle with us in court and agree to a firm definition of willfulness that protects dealers from arbitrary revocations, but they've refused. Instead, they filed a motion to dismiss our case, saying it's moot because they voluntarily repealed the policy. Folks, that's not good enough. In our response filing, which we're sharing today, we lay out why this case is far from over. First, this reeks of what's known as voluntary cessation. Now, that's legal speak for when a defendant stops its bad behavior just to avoid a court ruling, but they could start it up again anytime. Again, is there anyone who doesn't think that a President Harris or Newsom would kickstart the zero tolerance program and start revoking dealers' licenses? The Supreme Court says the government has a heavy burden to prove it's absolutely clear it won't repeat the violation. But the ATF hasn't met that burden. Heck, they won't even admit zero tolerance was wrong or unlawful. They keep defending parts of it and say it's only unlikely they will bring it back. Unlikely? I mean, that's not really reassuring. And get this, the ATF has changed its revocation policy 5 times in 5 years, each one lasting less than 19 months. It's like whack-a-mole. The ATF issues these policies internally behind closed doors and without public input, which means that a new anti-gun administration could simply flip the switch right back. Second, this policy is capable of repetition yet evading review. That means it's the kind of short-lived agency action that can be turned on and off so fast it dodges full court scrutiny, including all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Biden ATF announced zero tolerance back in 2021, but it has tweaked and replaced the policy multiple times since then. None lasted long enough for complete judicial review. You know, history shows the ATF flips on major issues based on who's in the White House. Under Biden, the ATF was weaponized against gun owners. Under Trump, they backed off. But without a court ruling, the next anti-gun president could reinstate ATF's weaponization overnight. We've seen ATF's regulatory roller coaster before on bump stocks, pistol braces, engaged in the business, you name it. Multiple courts have called the ATF out for being arbitrary and capricious. Look, we can't let the ATF get away with this now. And speaking of pistol braces, by the way, let's talk about some good news mixed in. Recently, the ATF dropped its appeal in Mock versus Bondi. That's the Firearms Policy Coalition's big victory striking down the pistol brace ban. This rule, which tried to reclassify millions of brace pistols as short-barreled rifles requiring registration and taxes, was vacated by a Texas judge. And now it's officially dead after the DOJ dismissed the appeal. Now, while that's amazing, It shows the administration can do the right thing when it wants to. So why then is it still fighting us on the engaged in the business rule and this zero tolerance mess? If this administration is serious about undoing Biden's damage, it should stop opposing us in court and work with us to make these fixes permanent. Look, we're not here to unduly bash the Trump administration. They've delivered big wins, like pulling out of bad international gun control treaties and appointing pro-Second Amendment judges. But we have a once-in-a-generation chance to lock in victories against ATF overreach. If we don't fight for permanence now, future administrations will undo it all. That's why GOA is pushing forward. Our members, like the dealers who lost their businesses and the gun owners who rely on them, deserve better. We've already spent tens of thousands of dollars defending against these revocations, and now we're racking up thousands more in legal bills because this administration doesn't want to achieve permanent and lasting protections for gun owners in these areas that I've talked about. We have to fight for more. So if you're upset about this, please let Pam Bondi at the DOJ and the Trump administration know. Contact them and voice your support for settling these cases to secure real, enduring wins. Thanks for watching, and God bless.